walked through fire with shadows on my heels. Scars turned to stories that taught me to feel. Lost in the silence, found in the flame. Now wear my battle cry without shame. This isn't the end, it's where I begin. A soul that remembers the fire within.
Welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, brought to you by Praxis 33. I'm your host, Daryl Snow. Let's dive in. Every once in a while, you're fortunate enough to meet an individual online, kind of follow their life, and then you get the pleasure of meeting them in real life, and they're just as cool in real life as they are online. And my guest today was one of those guys. I really admire and respect Javier Santana. Javier is a marketing and branding sage and a creative entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience helping businesses and individuals bring clarity, purpose, and life to their message. And a storyteller at heart and the founder of Vita Brand Lab, Javi blends strategy, creativity, and soul to spark transformation. He's on a mission to awaken other souls so they can live their life they're meant to live fully and leave a trail worth following. And when he's not guiding brands or crafting narratives, you'll find him savoring coffee, watching baseball, or spending time with his 3 daughters, which are the heartbeat of his why. And Javi, I paused there for a second because I used, Javier, but I hesitated like Javi because we were, sit down 50-year-old friends, Sorry.
Nice to have 2 old guys talking about life and, so Gen Xers.
one extremely much older than you. I just turned 61, so I got another decade on you. And you're coming to us from Delaware. Is obviously not where you were born and raised, is it?
It is not. So Delaware I've been here most of my adult life. I'm 55 now, but I was born in Puerto Rico and grew up there. When I was 11 years old, I moved to the United States with my mom and my sister and to the Northern Virginia, D.C. area, west of Washington. And that's where I grew up in Reston, Virginia. And then I went to college in Delaware. I was an aspiring baseball player. Javier Santana, you figure, just give me the contract. I just have to play second base and third base. So I was on a baseball scholarship at Delaware State in the early 90s, and baseball didn't pan out for my career, but I ended up planting roots in Delaware.
And what brought your family to the United States?
My mom and my dad divorced early when I was 2 years old, so she raised my sister and I by herself, single mom. And her sister, my aunt, had worked for the Food and Drug Administration, was transferred to D.C. in the early 80s. So we came to visit to them for a summer, and I think less than a year later we moved because she loved it, and come. So her sister was encouraging her to come, and there we were. We just picked up, and it's interesting. I didn't know any English. I was 11. On Friday, I went to school in Puerto Rico. Monday, they put me in a school in Virginia, and I never looked back.
And how did you learn the language? Because you speak really well. I mean, you've been here for 40 years. You should, but still.
Yeah, right. I guess when you're young and resilient, you don't know any better. That the adults is we kind of complicate things, but that's I just learned quickly. I was in 5th grade. My sister was in 3rd grade. I think we moved in March, and I went to school like summer school. After I didn't even miss a grade. My sister was held back a year. She was a little younger, so she repeated 3rd grade here. So I just learned it. You have to. If I dumped you in Italy, and you got to figure it out.
You got to figure it out. Yeah. It's funny because a couple of weeks ago I was talking to a lady who, she came here when she was 23. She came here from Colombia, and she learned the English language by reading the dictionary front to back. She's like, I need to know. And it's funny because she landed in Miami. And after 6 months, she got out of Miami because she said, I'll never learn the English language here. I got to go somewhere else where I can learn the English language. So she she went to Washington D.C. and started
Very
reading the
accurate.
dictionary. So yeah, I find that hilarious. What was it like growing up as an immigrant child in the East?
Oh, it's fine. I mean, I'm very thankful to my mom that she never let us speak English in the house. Um, so I'm fluent in Spanish. I never, obviously my vocabulary, my spelling might be a little off. There's words now like, that are more modern that I have to kind of look up, but you know, um, but being from Puerto Rico is different. I mean, I was born a U.S. citizen, is because Puerto Rico is a territory. Um, but yeah, with my mom was interesting because she just a lot of things probably didn't was it. She protected us, very very protective, like So I was shielded by a lot of things, and I thank her for it. But yeah, I never had any issues. In the beginning with the Spanish, I remember being made fun of and stuff. I actually still remember that in the because I didn't know any English. There was some guy who called me a bad name, and I'm not going to repeat it here. And I was like, see. And then I remember like 6 months later, I learned a word, and I'm like, oh, where is he?
I have something to say now.
I'm going to find that guy.
Yeah. I've known you for several years now, and you've always been just this gentle, humble soul. Were you that way as a kid, or did you kind of transform into that as an adult, or were you kind of always that way?
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how I am. I mean, people tell me how to perceive me. I'm. I think I have to again attribute a lot of things to my mom. She was very overprotective mother. I hated not her, but I hated my adolescence. Through high school, she was just like, "You got to be home by this time," like really tough. But I was raised by women too. Like my godmother lived with us, and my mom. Um, not saying but my dad wasn't around. So I now God blessed me with three daughters, so it just kept going. So I was around them. Like, I
Yeah,
know who's in charge. This guy is not.
yeah, you get to know the torment of daughters, man.
See this? This
Yeah,
is like that's not age. That's actually
yeah. This
daughters
this
right
was
there.
this was not salt and pepper
Right.
until I had my daughter. It was all pepper. Now it's all salt. Yeah,
You know.
I do. As a pretty good baseball player, if you're going, on scholarship, what was your major besides sports?
At the time, it was called. It doesn't exist anymore because it was called business art, commercial art. This is pre-internet, pre-computers. This is I graduated in '93. I remember, so it was more like even the marketing wasn't used. It was more like not desktop publishing. It was more like commercial art. So advertising, that world. So it was a split major. I took business classes at the same time I took like fine art. So like nobody knew what was going to happen a few years later with the internet and the computers and the Macs coming into the world. So I knew all that stuff, and I was going to be in the advertising world. All of a sudden, I graduate college. Oh crap! I didn't get drafted. Not going to play baseball. And then they're like, "Well, do you know Quark Express? Do you know, do you have a computer? Do you know like these different software at the time? Obviously now it's like Adobe InDesign, the desktop publishing, and like I have no idea what this is. So that diploma was worth nothing because what I was trained for was no longer in existence. So it began a pattern which to this day I am. It's like you gotta figure it out and reinvent yourself, and so I taught myself everything
It's
from
funny
that.
because I was 35 when I got my bachelor's degree, and I had been in sales since I was a young kid. I mean, you know, Eagle Scout, you learn to sell, as a kid in elementary school or junior high, you learn to sell candles and, Snickers bars and all that stuff, and so I was really good at sales. So I never had any interest in graphic design. And it was getting to that day and age where now you needed a degree in order to get a job, whereas before I
Mm,
just needed to know how to speak. And so
right.
I happened to be working for a local art school here as an admissions representative. And I was literally in my house, the first house I had bought, laying on the couch, and I just woke up like out of a nap and sat up and go, I think I'm going to go to school. I kind of like where
Wow.
I'm working. I think I'll go there. And so I went to design school.
That's
uh,
amazing.
yeah, and I ended up finishing third in my class, not because I was any more talented than those kids, but because I was willing to outwork them. Like I busted my ass. So I learned graphic design and then started my own design company. What got you into entrepreneurship?
I think that was just ingrained in me. All my family has always been like that. My grandfather, my uncles, my aunts, and they just had. I always saw people. I come from a long lineage of artisans in Puerto Rico, like good artists, and they would have their own businesses, and so I was exposed to that. But then as things went on, I got a job. I mean, this is early on, so I was a graphic designer. I got jobs doing that. I worked in printing companies as a typesetter, learning that world, prepping files for print. But I always, it's really started coming out. And to answer your question, when the internet really kicked off, I was working as a this is what like a part-time job as a customer service representative for a company that does warranties. So we just answer the phone, but we sitting there waiting for a phone call, and we had all the tables. And I remember this guy across from me had this book, and it was like web design. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And it's like this thick.
Mm-hmm.
This is like 93, 94. And I'm asking him, he's like, oh, this is kind of the thing, websites and all this. And I was already doing the graphics for print, and that kind of exposed me to that. And I ended up building a website like a year later, the way at the time that we used to do them. And I ended up applying for a job on an internet service provider called Easy Online. They're no longer in business, in Delaware. I was living in Virginia. That's how we actually came back to Delaware, because a friend of mine lived in Delaware, and they sent me the job description looking for web designers. I'm like, I'm not a web designer. I would love to, but I do graphics. Like, you should apply. I applied. I sat with them for like 5 hours, and they said, look, what you know, I can't teach, but I can teach you this technique because you can apply your hours to do this. So then I started doing that, and I'm like, wait a second, I could do this on the side and do websites for people. And then that's when I've always had some client on the side.
Is that when you started Vita Brand Lab?
No, Vida Brand Lab is the latest version of my business that I just rebranded not even a year ago. I've had my side business for a long time. I've had jobs, and I was working for a gentleman as a marketing director back from 2018 to 2020. Around 2020, when the world went to hell, COVID, his company was a construction company, and he also owned plumbing and HVAC. So I was the marketing director for him during that time, and my dream was to have my own agency, like full blown. I was more like a freelancer now, side hustle as they call it now, and always had business that way. It was nice to have my mom says icing money, and then you have your cake money as your job. So I always had icing money because that's extra. But then I started. I asked my business partner, not my business, my boss at the time. We were good friends. Hey, this is what I want to do. I'm already servicing you. Like, I like to start this. I'd love to do it with you. And he had resources. He had capital, which it's nice when you have partnership. Here's advice for everybody: if you go into partnership with somebody, make sure that both people are not broke. It's not going to.
That's good advice for whatever the partnership is: business, relationship, any part of it. Like, right.
So he had capital. He had, I provided, sweat equity, and he provided real equity. So I said, he said, what do you? I love to start my own agency. I actually designed a logo. The name of the company was High Ground Creative, and I had designed that logo, gosh, a year Yeah, there it is. See the back? We're behind Megan. That's my oldest daughter. That's High Ground Creative, and that was the office at the time. By the way, that's Megan. We used to have a podcast, father daughter entrepreneurs, and he said, "What do you need?" It's like I need to hire 2 people to get started. We started servicing his businesses, and quickly I grew it, and it was amazing. So at my peak, I had 8 full-time employees, like on staff, like here physically in Delaware with me. We're doing very well. And then a year and a half ago, I shortly after, like around the time when I guess we'll talk about this a little later, my separation with my wife, and there was a lot of clarity in my life during this time, and I realized, my marriage is over. I'm being untethered from a person I never thought I was going to be. It gave me a lot of clarity about other things that weren't serving me, and one of those was that relationship. Not a personal thing; it's just directional, creatively. I wanted to do certain things. He wanted to do other things. It wasn't aligning, so we kind of shut it down. And I went on my own. So some people scale up. I scaled up, and then I scaled down on purpose. I had to shut it down. Every one of my clients came with me, so it's not like the business wasn't doing well. So for like a year, I was drowning in these retainer contracts and served my clients. It was fine, but it gave me the autonomy, and to me, that's incredibly the most valuable thing. Which I still got to work, I still got to make the money, but I can go left, up, up, down, left, right, and without having to ask somebody.
Which is very freeing. And when we come back from this short commercial break, we're going to dive into just how much freedom that allowed you. So we'll be right back.
So when did you realize the noise in your head wasn't actually your voice? When I noticed every thought sounded borrowed. Fear, pressure, old scripts, just running on repeat. That's why I listen to Breakthrough Radio. Scripture, truth, conversations that actually reset the way you think. Breakthrough Radio, because what you hear shapes who you become. Listen daily.
Hey, welcome back to the show. We're sitting here with Javier Santana, and today we're diving into his creative journey. And we were talking about you mentioned briefly before we went out, your relationship with your wife. You were married for quite a long time. How long were you married?
28 years.
28 years is a long time, and then to have it dissolve. Now, I'm a little older, so I've seen some marriages, and I don't know your relationship or what happened, but what does happen that I see when people have that kind of longevity is that they become empty nesters, and then they forgot how to still communicate with each other, because a lot of the marriage, they were busy raising the kids and businesses and all that. And so when it just became them again, they forgot, how to keep that going. Was that similar to your situation or different?
There's some similarity. We were married 28. We were together almost 32.
Over half your life.
Absolutely. There's culpability in both ends. So there's nothing. Her and I still talk. We co-parent. My youngest, who's 16 now, going on 30, which I see that, but being my third one, I thought it was easier. It's different. Like my girls are 6 years apart, so it's just complete different generations. So anyway, so I'll kind of sum that up in a nice little bow for you. I think what it was, looking back, because it's easier looking back, is no regrets. Because I don't look back at my marriage and go, oh, that was horrible. No, obviously we all had our ups and downs in some really tough periods. We birthed 3 beautiful young ladies. She was running away from her dad, and I was running away from my mother. We were dating, and it was like, okay. And we started this life and decided to start adulting, because the alternative was, and again, my mom is one of my best friends. I love her dearly. We're very close. And so it's not a thing now, but at the time it was like, this is what we need to do. So I don't think those 2 young whippersnappers had any business getting married. But then we had Megan a year later, and here we go. Let's start our life.
I can
And
understand
then,
that. Now,
yeah,
in your personal situation, it's not often, and I'm going to go back to your creative endeavors here with High Ground Creative. It's not often we get to go into business and do work with our children, which for you I
yes,
think is amazing. And I've seen your daughter's work online. She is an
incredibly
amazing,
talented,
she's a
right?
very talented person. And so
Yes.
how did it come about that you two decided to, hook up and do this stuff?
Oh, it's a great, great question. So she is a prettier version of me. I mean, obviously she's been married a year and she's been out of the house for a while, so she's developing her, more her personality. But when she lived with me, like I knew what she was thinking. It was me. Like, so creatively, she kind of got that and the love for coffee and all that. So we share a lot of the same interests. Um, um, so we've always been very close, her and I. So she's unemployable, an entrepreneur since she's now 28 and she was like 20. The only two jobs she's ever had, one was working for me when I used to be a co-owner of a construction company, but I ran the special projects and marketing. That didn't last very long, but she worked for us for 1 year, and then she also worked for Chick-fil-A for 6 months. After that, she's been literally self-employed the whole time, her whole life. There was, to answer your question, we were asked to be on a podcast together, father daughter, entrepreneurs, and we went on the podcast. And during that podcast, I realized something. The light bulb went on. It's like, man, we really have. I kind of knew that, but like in this setting, we have really good chemistry. And I remember afterwards, I said to her, "Hey, let's go get some lunch." And we went to like an IHOP down the street, and she was already thinking this. And so again, I'm like, did you like the whole thing? So I got this, like, she knew she had been helping me to put together a podcast for High Ground. It was just going to be Javi talking about marketing. Like, who the heck wants to listen to that? So I said to her, would you mind, since you've been helping me, what do you think about being in front of the camera with me? She's like, Dad, it would be so awesome. I was thinking about that. So we had conversation and, we started developing it. We changed the concept. And 3 months later, we started this together.
Yeah, and I listened to some of your guys' shows, and the dynamic between you is really great. And it's always nice when you can get the younger person's version and the older person's version of a topic or a subject and see how they are viewed differently and how they blend. And you guys were awesome. Speaking of blend, anybody who knows Javier Santana, knows that a day without coffee is like, just kidding. I have no idea, according to Javi. And now I don't do this often, but in order to, I brought my coffee as well, my rare second cup of the day. Now it is an evening interview, so I did make it an Irish coffee, but coffee nonetheless. So explain how this passion and love for coffee, and I'm wondering too, even in this Vita Brand Lab, is that a coffee bean?
No, these are little leaves. Okay, we have.
It does look like a coffee bean, though.
It does. Let me close the Vita Brand loop because you asked me earlier. Okay, so High Ground Creative, that was the business that had the employees and like full staff, office location. We had a lot of clients. Then I shut that down, went on my own. I changed the name to High Ground Solutions because people knew me as High Ground. So it could have been High Ground Underwater Basket Weaving didn't matter because it was High Ground. So I created that LLC. But then with Vida, the reason this is there is that a year into it, I started thinking to myself, where I am in my heart, in my journey, is not that High Ground is kind of connected to an old life, even though it wasn't so long ago. So I went through this creative process. It took me like several months, but like in the morning, I woke up and like I need to change this because so my messaging and my name aligns more of who I am now, post divorce, post everything. And Vida stands for it's life in Spanish. So Vida Brand Lab was more of boutique rather than a full fledged agency. So the concept came out of that. So I'm more like a lab, a small thing that I work with people one on one. We help people formulate things with their business. We look at things and do experiments and things like that. Kind of like that's the concept. That's why it's now called Vida Brand Lab rather than High Ground. So then to segue to coffee, coffee has always been part of my DNA. Culturally, Puerto Ricans are, coffee in many cultures. It doesn't matter, but a lot of cultures. I remember being 3 years old and drinking coffee. It's part of my culture, it's part of our life, and so I'm a very much an aficionado. I am incredibly passionate about the coffee, everything about it. And another dream I've always had was to launch a coffee business. So coffee is again, I can't imagine my life without it. So that's kind of what it is. So I overdo it on purpose because it's fun, and talk about it all the time. But the goal is, later this year to launch a coffee business. I've been working on that for close to 2 years, not on and off, but the vision is there. This is not like white labeled stuff. This is full fledged importing and roasting, direct to consumer business. So I need a lot of capital to do this right. And I've even made a decision to even open up brick and mortar, as part of it, which I'll roast on location, but have people come in and do that. So the name of that business is going to be called Vivir Coffee Company. So vida is life. In Spanish, vivir is to live in life. So what I would say to everybody is I didn't have a midlife crisis at 50. I had a midlife awakening that was my divorce was the catalyst for the awakening. Some people, and I speak to people about this all the time. It doesn't, for me, that's what woke me up. It doesn't have to take the loss of a long marriage for that to happen. My mom always said, and she's probably heard it from others, that one of the best gifts you can give anybody was to inspire them. So I tried to live my life that way and develop a platform where I can talk and inspire others. But I'm just wrapping my message around the coffee bean, because coffee promotes life. The lifespan of a bean. It's kind of a metaphor for life. You have it come out of the plant, some fall off. You have to prune it. You have to nurture it. Then you have to apply heat to get all the impurities out. I mean, that's life. That's our life journey, right?
It is definitely our life journey. What I love is that you and I are of an age where we can remember when guys our age used to get into like the home microbrew. They're going to have their own brewery in their house, right? And instead, you're going to have your own coffee villa, coming right up. And knowing you, it's going to be wildly and hugely successful. And in this society, and I was talking about this with a couple of our other guests, everything socially is geared around drinking. Like, oh, let's go have a drink. Let's go have a drink. Let's go have a happy hour. Let's go have a drink. It's nice that you're going to be able to offer a coffee. Let's go have a cup of coffee or a tea or whatever. Let's go, the non-alcoholic route and still be able to socialize, drink. We look back at our grandparents and, they would sit around the kitchen table with their friends with a cup of coffee, or they would go down to the local, cafe and sit and chat with a cup of coffee. So I think you're bringing an element back to society that society has been missing. So I think indirectly you're doing something, fabulous. And I'm going to circle back to that in a minute, but something that you also have a passion for that not many people have the passion for, Survivor. You wanted to be on Survivor, and how many times did you apply?
What do you mean did? I still applied. I think I applied in January the last time.
So you applied for 51.
I applied for 51 and 52.
Okay. And so how many times total have you applied for Survivor?
It's funny because first time I applied was season 2. I sent a VHS tape,
Oh my goodness.
and then I didn't for. Then I watched season. I didn't get in. I watched season 2. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. They freaking suffered. So, like they really suffered. And the next one was Africa, which they really suffered then. But then, since COVID, I've applied twice a year because you're not supposed to overdo it. They kind of start so. Before every season, I send a new one. So basically, is probably 8 times. I was so encouraged, by the way, last season. I forget his name. There was one of the folks that had been trying for 8 years and finally got in.
And
So
what has driven this passion to be on Survivor? It's funny because my wife tells me that I should go be on Traders, and
oh, that's
you're
a great
wanting to
show, by the way.
you're
Great
wanting
show.
to be on Survivor. I'm like, I don't know.
Right. Traders, you get food, you get a bed. In this one, you
Right.
don't.
Yeah.
So I think it's a rite of passage I didn't get when I was a young man that I feel I need to go in an island in Fuji for a month and go on.
You could go do the Special Forces one now. That's a
No. Survivor.
Survivor.
That's the
Well,
big one.
I keep praying that you get on Survivor. That's
Oh
hilarious.
my god. I keep not. I get so emotional about it. I don't know what it is, Daryl. It's and I check. I'm the old guy. In every season, there's the old guy. I check the old guy box.
Yeah.
So,
You check the old guy box and the guy with the wisdom and who also has a good social game.
yeah, I have a good social game. I believe that I would do very well in this. Here's the last thing I'll say about Survivor, and I even said this in one of my audition tapes. Not eating, not a problem. I can go. No, not an issue. No coffee. That's going to get me voted off. So whenever I find out when I'm speaking into assistants, I'm going to literally that moment till the moment I'm there, I'm going to little detox and go through my withdrawals here before I get over there.
That's
because you don't want angry Javi on the island. You want
maybe
happy Javi.
maybe they'll put you in Colombia and then you guys can just do Colombian
Yeah,
coffee.
there we go.
In your bio, we talked about that you're on a mission to awaken other souls so that they can live their life the way they're meant to be. And what does that look like in your world?
No, it's great question. Any opportunity I can, just through my content, just my connections. I talk about moments over milestones all the time. We have these big moments in on the calendar, like we mark every year. Oh, here's the birthday, and here's the graduation, and here's this, and it's a great. But life really happens between those moments in the little small minutia of everyday life, the mundane moments where we know there's miracles only if it's slowed down enough to see it. So that message, it's simple and it's not something I made up, but most people are in fifth gear all the time, and we need to be reminded to downshift, to be able to slow down, to be able to see this. So that's the awakening. I had it, but it doesn't have to take the end of a 20-year marriage for you to wake up. But there's a lot of people awake and numb and in living lives of quiet desperation. I forget the name of the author said that. And I lived that for many years. And there's more to life than just grinding. So my mission is just to any opportunity I get to do that. In the coffee business, yes, it is a business enterprise. It's going to be a lifestyle brand, but I'm going to use that as a way for me to communicate this message. Coffee promotes connection and promotes, community. It's more than a morning ritual. It's a kind of like a daily decision to be present and to embrace passion in life, and it fosters connection, like you were talking about when you drink a cup of coffee with somebody. So that's what I'm trying to build, and just building a platform. Marketing to me, I love and I do very well, but I don't like get jazzed up about doing a website or doing a logo. I get jazzed up about, awakening somebody to see life the way it should be seen, and really start living it the way that it should be lived, because I just experienced it. I'm almost in the middle of it, and I was numb for 50 years.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's like the last 2.5 years, have been my own awakening, and it wasn't a midlife crisis, but it was a healing. Those of us who are grinders by nature, I have found in my own coaching practice and the people that I've talked to and the people I've seen progress, grinders by nature are trying to run from some traumatic experience they haven't healed from. And the busier they are, the more they do, the more they feel some sort of accomplishment and success. When the real life, like you said, is lived off of that hamster wheel. And one of the hardest things is to step off that hamster wheel and have quiet time, downtime, connection time, and learning that life is more than what you do. And it's funny, if you ask 10 people, Javi, who are you? First thing they're going to say is their job.
Right.
I'm an electrician, I'm a plumber, I'm a whatever. Second thing they'll probably say is a father, husband, or whatever. You have to get them to really peel back their onion before they tell you who they are without that label of their job or their duty. And you and I both know, because we both experienced it, when you can get to the point where you're living life, not existing life, there is peace and joy that is rarely experienced by many. And I think,
and it's there.
What's that?
It's attainable, and that's part of the mission, to let them know that this is doable. This is not out of reach.
Yeah, and that's what your job is. But I think you're doing it like my goal is to help people connect their purpose and their passion. And we are gifted something in our heart that is supposed to be birthed to bring forth, not for our benefit, but for those around us and those that need it. I'm very spiritual. I'm very connected with God. I haven't met any spiritual person who was gifted and birthed an idea, a thought, or a passion that was solely for them.
Right. That's a good point. You're right.
So connecting people to that and helping them get to that is a very powerful mission. And I'm glad that you're on, but it's also done in a fashion that you're very good at, and that's storytelling. Right. So how did you get great at storytelling?
I mean, being in the marketing world and that you kind of develop that. But, it's interesting. I have a lot of family members who are, my uncle, my mom's brother, Jorge, he lives in Puerto Rico. Best storytellers I know. I think everybody in my family, at least on my mom's side, is like that. So biblically, I mean, Jesus spoke in parables. He talked about stories. People understand things when they see themselves in this. So you can bring a point home. And then, like, people make fun of me, like, "Oh, Javi, you kind of over-explain. You need to land the plane." I'm like, something. That's how I communicate. But when you're telling a story, you have to have prologue, and you have to build your characters and do your setting, and then you'll bring it home. So, like I'm doing right now.
Fortunately, here we have a long runway, so you just circle and bring it home whenever you need to. We got plenty of runway here for you, so you just do your thing.
I think the idea is, I'm good at branding and good at messaging because of what I've been doing for a long time. I know, and bringing it together. So I figure that's a gifting I have. So why not apply that, obviously, to the enterprise that I'm going to do? Now, my motivation is fueled to help others and for my passion. But why not? It's okay to make money doing it, and that's where I'm going to land and hang my hat. What a concept! Loving what you do. And when you make money at it, people should try that.
Everyone should try that, because it is, and these people that get this aversion to money, or because you're doing something that's transformative to someone else, you shouldn't charge for it, or all this stuff. And I've said this a gazillion times. As magnanimous as I want to be, if I want to go into McDonald's and buy everyone a hamburger, they're not going to let me do it on my good looks. I have to have money. Because otherwise they might get a ketchup packet. I need to have the money. Right? So
and there's no shame in that. It's the motivation behind it, right? There's a lot of false humility out there with this, and I don't have it. Money doesn't drive me. but it's necessary to be able to function.
It's absolutely. So let me ask you a couple deeper questions. And you've mentioned your awakening, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So marriage issue aside, who are you today versus who you were 6 years ago?
I'm awake. I'm clear. I'm me. I lost who I was. I'm back. And I like this guy. I have a lot of work to do, but I like me. And I'm glad that I'm back. It took this awakening. I can't take that event out of the equation, because if it wasn't for that, it's kind of weird, because I'm not. Now that I'm the other side of this, I mean, I'm very thankful. I mean, I never wished for that to happen to me. I always thought I was going to grow old with this person, but that's not what happened. So instead of sulking and going in a fetal position and saying, making this an excuse to whatever, I made it a reason to whatever it is.
And what does an
So,
awakened Javier look like versus the one who was just kind of walking through life?
I feel, and I allow myself to feel in all areas. And I've said this before, where a lot of us, including me for many years, my drug was drivenness, like busy, 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 busy. And when you slow down, then you have to start feeling. So the what people don't realize is, when you're trying to numb the pain, it's not selective. It's all or nothing. So you also numb the joy and the happiness and all that stuff. So I realized in my awakening that I had to risk betrayal. I had to risk disappointment. I had to risk pain again in order to feel happiness and joy. When I realized that moment, that's part of the awakening. I made a decision to allow myself to work through emotions and be, like people, the buzz term these days, be vulnerable, where it's just feel like, and I think God got 3 daughters who are Gen Zs who feel everything and communicate it very well. So I'm like, okay, but now I'm like, it's working through those emotions, but now you feel alive. This sounds weird. I kid you not. And I'm going to share it because we had a huge snowstorm up here in the Northeast a few weeks ago. It's still here. It's been today. Yesterday was the first day above freezing, like in 2 weeks. And I remember walking around taking the trash can on trash day, and I had to go over ice because I had to go up the front yard. This happened last week. I ran over my toe because I had my flip flops. I mean,
Okay. Sure.
I had my flip on, but I had my flip.
Yeah.
So, and it hurt. And I stopped for a second, and instead of like cursing the world, I'm like, man, feels good to be alive. I kid you not. It was just a week ago. No, that I didn't like it. I don't try to inflict pain on myself, but I'm like, man, like I feel that. Ooh, I'm not going to do it again.
Yeah, but there's a part of that people don't embrace. Like you said something I think a lot of people miss. When you're numbing the pain, you're also numbing the joy and the happiness. And I just had this conversation with my wife today. I can't remember most of my life because most of my life I was running from the trauma. And so even though I've lived in a lot of places, I can't tell you hardly one thing about any of those places because any of the joy I experienced there was masked over by the trauma I was trying to run from.
Wow.
And so you're extremely correct. You numb it all. So in your awakening, how has this made you a better father?
Well, part of the awakening is self-awareness. So, and I'll answer your question there, but the part of that is like, ooh, I see why they didn't like that about me. Ooh, let me fix that. But as a father, it allows me, I've always really like, that's a category and a place where I really, regardless of my flaws and my numbness or whatever, I really poured into my daughters. I think it was a consequence of just not having my dad with me growing up. So I never wanted. I saw the impact of not having a father, and also what it did to my younger sister, who was a young lady, and not having dad. So I always like, I don't know what to do, but I know what not to do. right? But as a father, I think that I empathy a lot more. Um, I I listen more. I don't react, and I do that in life more than I did before. But with my daughters, even more. I just see them, really see them, and I really enjoy them. Um, so that's been a big thing with me with this awakening. Is just allowing me to kind of slow down and just kind of it's almost like I'm a kid in the candy store. Like, what's a better analogy? Oh, okay. You're like you remember this. Some of the older viewers see this. Remember those posters where you had to kind of stare at it for a minute and then all of a sudden it kind of popped.
Yeah, the 3D ones.
Right,
Yeah,
right. So
I love those.
I that imagery for me is my life was that poster before, and then now I'm like, oh, and like a lot of my world is like that, where I'm like, when the numbness goes, now I'm feeling all kinds of things and different things, and now it's a discipline of how to react, what to do, and I sound like in some kind of robot or something, but it's that new. I'm in
Yeah.
the middle of this transition the last several years.
How are you adapting to joy? Because I know when I experienced it, it was hard to accept joy because I hadn't known it for 59 years, other than my wife. How are you accepting joy? Are you good with it? Was it hard?
That
Was
is
it different?
one of the hardest questions I've ever been asked. Um, I'm still working on it. Um, yeah, that's a tough one. Enjoying things more. Look. I talk about this whole thing as like I've arrived. I'm in the middle of it too. So I've been feeling restless a lot recently, and I started looking into it and like, where is that coming from? And it's that like the downtimes when I've achieved them, and there's like, okay, I could be doing something, but I choose not to, and then enjoying those moments, and when there's something that to be joyful about, to stay in that longer. I It's hard. It is very difficult, but being mindful of that, and of that energy is important. And then it's okay to stay in there and not just suppress it or kind of fold it. Like, people suppress pain or suppress negative emotions, but they also suppress joy. But I like to tell you this, that the restlessness is subsiding more and more, and that's when there's room for really enjoying those moments. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I'm still working on it. It's a struggle daily.
Yeah, you answered it. And in my own life, I see those moments where I have given myself the grace to be
Yeah.
still.
Mm,
I have to
yeah.
fight the mental part that says you should be doing something. When in
Right.
reality, what I'm doing is reconnecting with my spirit and my soul and allowing my
Mm.
joy to return to my body instead of just doing something. So I think you're doing the right thing, and it is hard to accept that stillness as a gift to yourself.
I'm
And
taking this with this
go
moment
ahead.
that you just touched me with. No, I'm literally going to stay in that for a little while. Thank you for sharing that with me, because I need
Yeah,
to.
please do. I'm going to ask you two variations of a similar question. What do you want Javier Santana's legacy to be?
Good Lord.
We're not going to go with good Lord. You're not going to be good Lord. You're going to be you're going to be
Well,
Javier Santana.
being a branding guy, I like to name things. So I have this little slogan, like ethos I live by. Like I say, live now, leave a trail. And live now is more like presence and mindfulness and being in the present moment. And not just being physically present, being here, like in your heart, and you're like engaging. But leave a trail is the legacy component. You can choose to leave a trail of destruction or leave a trail of joy and happiness. And so every time we come into contact with somebody, we have a chance to leave crumbs, a part of our trail, with that interchange, even if we never saw that person ever again. So in any circumstance, seeing the world in the micro that way is part of legacy. So that's still legacy. Slowing, like you run into somebody, you say a kind word, might not be remembered by all kinds of people, but that's legacy because you're leaving that in the macro. My daughters are part of my legacy. I will let them in my funeral say what it is, but what I can do is I can control today, and my mission is becoming my purpose, and that's going to be part of my legacy.
So in your answer, you may have answered part of this second half of the question, because I said I was going to ask it to you in two ways. So that was your legacy. What do you want to be known? Because legacy is after, in my opinion, like after.
Right.
But what do you want to be known for
in
this variation of who you are?
Gosh, that's a hard question. It's interesting because when a question is asked like that, immediately there's the voices start like, don't say that, don't say that, don't say that. I think the first thing that came into my heart when you said that, without filtering it, was the cliche is leaving the world better but I would say the people that I came into contact with are better because I helped make their life better somehow. I don't know what that looks like. People say, well, if you don't have enemies, you're not doing something right. I'm like, I call BS. I understand when people say that. I'm not trying to be liked by everybody. I used to be that type of person. That's not my goal. But if I have an opportunity to bless somebody and apply grace, even when that's not asked for, that's a better choice of legacy than just revenge or being vengeful, or bringing that down. That doesn't help the world. That doesn't help them.
So when someone comes to you and they're in their own awakening, they're in their own spiritual warfare and their own spiritual journey, they say, Javi, you've started yours. I see where you're going. How do I navigate this? Where do I start? What do you tell those people?
Well, I would say something that it's very new to me, but you can't give what you don't have. So go internally and start working on you, because that's the most unselfish thing that anybody can do. Because then when your cup is full and overflows, from that is when you can bless others. I gave my oxygen to everybody in my life, my entire life, and I suffocated in the process. So I would say, work on you. Don't ignore the world, and then you're going to have there's going to be margin to help others.
And I've said this for years, selflessness is not selfish. For that exact reason, you have to be able to give. If you want to continue to give throughout your life, you have to refill your cup first. Because if your cup has a constant hole in the bottom and you're just pouring, eventually there's nothing left for you to give, and you lose yourself, you lose who you are. Sometimes you lose your health along the way. Sometimes you lose your own joy, your own happiness. And then what is it that you're giving? Nothing.
Nothing. My father died by himself of a heart attack in Puerto Rico on Father's Day about 8 years ago. I don't hate my dad. We had a fallout. We never really reconciled. That's been settled. I've reconciled that. But that's not a legacy. I have somebody, my brother-in-law passed away 3 years ago. And without getting into much, the only legacy he left was a life insurance policy. That's not, fine, but I'd rather leave more than that. But you can't, if you don't have it in you, there's nothing you can do. So from somebody who grew up with the value system that I don't believe anymore, if you take care of yourself, you're selfish. You got die to your. I understand the die to self from the Bible, but it doesn't imply that you ignore yourself and neglect yourself. It just means you in the priority list, you don't always put yourself first and at the expense of others. So there's a balance there. But again, when it comes to taking care of myself mentally, physically, emotionally, all of it, I can control that. And from that, I have the better capacity to be a better father and a better boss and a better, entrepreneur and a better business person, a better anything.
And eventually it'll make you also a better partner to whomever is next in your life.
Right.
You
Amen.
know, when we come to that place where they don't have to try to heal us, we come to the relationship with a much better opportunity for a lasting, not that 28 years wasn't lasting, but still, you know what I mean, for a lasting, soulful relationship.
Yeah,
When you were going through your awakening, I know from my own experience, when I started to heal and I started to find my own joy, some of my friends that I had known for 15, 20, 30 years started to fall off and went away because I realized that they were superficial friendships, and my changing changed their dynamic, and they didn't change, in that same path. Did any of that occur with you?
No, it actually was the opposite.
That's awesome.
I have two men who literally came back into my life, who knew me, and one of them, he's like my brother. He lives in Miami, and he's actually now a client too. But he's my brother. Says, "Hey, I missed you. I'm glad you're back." And it just was nothing against her. It was just like they saw it and they noticed. So there's one that his name is John. He lives in Virginia. I've known him since I was like literally the first friend I had when I moved to the United States in 11. So we're like friends. We reconnected. We've done stuff together. AJ's the same way. So I've known AJ for 40 plus years and John for 44 years. And those guys came back. Oh, and there's another person too. So I didn't have that, but because I think the people that I've been around, it's not that I don't have old friends in between that, but I tend to be friends with a lot of people I do business with. They just become friends and stuff. So the last 5 years, my new communities and circles of influence are fairly new, and so this transformation and stuff has happened the last 3 years of that 5. So they just know me, but they've seen what I've kind of gone through. I mean, you and I, were at an event together for a weekend a few years ago and had a lot of conversations during that time. And I was just starting to kind of go through that journey back then. But no. And I got a little emotional because I'm thankful that it didn't happen. But I think that if it were, I would have been at peace with it because I know who I am, and it's okay. And I understand that the people come into my life in seasons, and it's okay. It's not like now they're an enemy if they're not there anymore. But it's funny because you mentioned about doing things and whatever. I was always pretty straight from the perspective of getting in trouble because I always feared the wrath of my mother if I didn't do it. So baseball and my mother's wrath kept me in a straight line through college and stuff until I got married. Then I was my wife at the time, but so I didn't really get in trouble because of that.
Well, I'm glad that it worked in reverse and that those people came back to you. That shows real signs of healing. One last question for you before we wrap this up. What does a warrior spirit or having a warrior spirit mean to Javier Santana?
All right. I think the first word that came into mind was tenacity. Just picking yourself back up, keep going. That's the warrior spirit. Is yes, we're gonna get hit. Yes, we're gonna bleed. Yes, we're going to be bruised. But there's always another moment. There's always, you can still get up. You can still keep going. You can still work through it. There's always hope. There's always hope. And I believe that's the warrior spirit. To believe that and live that.
Well, I believe I'm blessed to know a person like you, and I thank you for coming on and sharing some
Thank
time
you.
with us. And thank you for doing this. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
And if you'd like to get in contact with Javi, you can do so at his website, vitabrandlab.com, and on his social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And as always, thank you for joining us on this edition of A Warrior Spirit. Be sure to like or subscribe so you catch all the episodes. You can tune in on all the major platforms, as well as on Roku via the Prospera TV app. And remember, the journey is sacred, the warrior is you, so be inspired, be empowered, and embrace the spirit of the warrior within.
It's not just about the fight, it's how we rise from it.